Welcome to the Millionaire Mindcast, where we broadcast weekly interviews with millionaire minds from across the globe to empower you on your journey of unlocking a rich and fulfilling life. It's time to unleash your millionaire within. Now, here's your host, Matty A.
Well, I'm excited to welcome into the show Lyann Nguyen. How are we doing today?
Doing amazing. Super busy at this time.
Yeah, a lot is going down right now, obviously, as we record this, depending on when our guests and listeners are tuning into this interview. We're, 60 days, 45, 60 days into quarantine. A lot has changed in really all aspects of life and business. I know you're seeing a lot of changes in the credit markets, which we're going to dive into here today. People that have been following you or know you from your personal brand as Credit Ninja, how did that come about? How did you find yourself to become the Credit Ninja?
Well, it's a personal journey. I actually went through bad credit. So for those of you who ask, I don't know how you feel about what I'm going through. You don't know how it feels. Well, when you actually go through a personal journey and really dig yourself out of the mess that you were in, I think in a sense, you become a mentor because you've been there versus someone who hasn't been there. So I personally went through the loss. In 2008, I lost quite a bit of money in my previous company, like in the millions. And at that time, when the housing crash happened, everybody who had a house or multiple houses, the whole market crashed. I was about to lose my home. I had lived on my credit card because my bank accounts were frozen. So talk about being well off and then losing it all. And being in $1 million home and not even having money to come in because all the resources were completely depleted. So in that depressing mode, I'm like, what do I do? How do I handle getting out of this? So after dealing into my house being like foreclosed, I dealt with one thing at a time. So we dealt with a short sale, and short sales are better than foreclosure on your credit. So I dealt with that, sold it to a friend of mine. And then the next thing was dealing with credit. All the things that were on my credit report, let me name it: collections, tax liens, judgments. It could go on and on, late, increase. It's all on there. My score was 508. It was so depressing. I couldn't even go and rent a car at that point. But because I went through that journey, and I do have a background in credit and debit, and also the laws that were coming out at that time because people were losing their homes, by marrying those two together, I'm able to now dispute my own personal file. And all of a sudden, things started falling off. I didn't pay a penny of it back. $160,000, paid none of it back. And this light bulb came on my head and goes, how many people went through the same thing I did, and how can I help these people? And so I carved this niche of a market out for me. So I contacted attorneys, CPAs, people in the industry, and asked them, who do you know that has been through this, that has lost a lot and now have regained that income back, but are still having bad credit? Because I went through it. I want to help them for free. Remember what I said, for free, because I just want to try this out and see if it's just me or somebody else. So started working on these people's files, and all of a sudden these results came back and people were happy. And they're like, wow, you're such a ninja. And I'm like, wow, I am a credit ninja. So the name chose me. I did not choose the name. And during that time, social media started to come off so strong. So I started just to grab that name on Instagram. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I knew that I needed to grab the name because it was meant to be. So, a little tip for everyone. If someone calls you a certain name or a title, note it down and grab it, because you may use it later on, because it's not really what you know anymore. It's important, and it's really not, who you know anymore, but it's who knows you. Your brand becomes extremely powerful because they don't remember your name, but they remember your brand. So I learned this from Gary Vaynerchuk, one of my mentors, and I met him in person when I started building the brand. And he said, you got to go all in because your name is fire. And if Gary V says your name is fire, you need to 10x that name. So that's how I got the name. And from there, I started working with organizations, sales organizations, and I'm on retainer for many organizations to help that whole team get financially strong by upping their credit game and learning all those tips and tricks and so forth.
And are you working more on kind of the business sector front or with the individual?
Both. So we work on it all starts with their personal credit, their personal score. And from there, we start building business credit based on their personal. So that's the part 2 of credit. So the third component is independent of itself. It's all based on EIN, which is their, federal tax ID for the company with their LLC or the S Corp. So there's 3 components to credit. And imagine you have 3 different ways to obtain credit, and it only happens in the US. And the third box is no personal guarantee. It takes longer to build, but banks and financial institutions are willing to give you massive lines of credit if you can prove to them that you are a legitimate company and you have all these things in place. So that's called corporate credit. And we provide services for all 3 of those different baskets.
I love it. So let's talk about the individual, right?
Yes.
With the times that we are currently in right now, and let's just, even pre-corona, there are a lot of people that are always looking to improve their credit. First and foremost, why is your credit score so important?
Well, it's so important because any type of lending decision, financial decisions, job decision, if somebody wanted to find out about you to do business, the first thing, that's all they have to rely on, because there's no other way to check up on that person's credit worthiness. It's the only system out there that most lenders follow. So if you're based on a score, you better know how to improve that score, because they don't know you any other way but your score. It's so critical, and everyone has a score, so everyone can relate to credit. It doesn't judge you by your sex or your age or your race. So it doesn't judge you. It only judge you by your performance and how you manage money.
And who comes up with these scores?
Yeah, basically it's the 3 credit bureaus that have the scores, but the FICO model is a separate company in itself, and it gathers all this data and it comes up with an algorithm that determines how well you pay, how long you've been doing this, and what is your record. Was there anything that you did that was negative? Was there any public records on what you did? Did you forego a loan, or did you get repoed, or was there a lien against you because you didn't pay someone or you didn't pay a bank back? So these liens and these public records, it's just gathering of data. And oftentimes this data could be correct or it could be incorrect. But that's where the power comes back to you, because you need to validate these debts and these information from this data broker, because they have so much data on you. There's so much errors or things that could go wrong. So you need to use that to your advantage to prove them wrong.
So let's talk about real fast in regards to what are the variables that people should be paying attention to that make up their credit score, and kind of the weight behind each one.
Yeah. So one of the most important thing is your payment history. So if you are late, even on one bill, your score can drastically drop, because that shows like a behavior pattern. So when, like, you're in the real estate world, when you're trying to get a mortgage, lenders really look heavily on your payment history. If you were late, if you had any collections. So late weighs very heavily, because that's something recent that they could tell that if they're giving you a mortgage and they see a lot of lates on there, chances are now their risk goes up. So they're going to give you a higher interest. And at the same time, they're going to require more documentation from you, an explanation of why you were late 5 times, 7 times. If it's just one time, then there are ways that you can dispute that, because it's the one-off time that you can ask for a quote unquote goodwill from this lender or this person that's reporting you. It's like a first time violation almost.
Right.
And of course, like I mentioned, collections is the second worst thing. And of course, within those collections, also bankruptcy, because that's a public record. Bankruptcy shows that you were trying to wipe up your entire debt. It weighs pretty heavy, almost close to a late pay. Okay. Yeah. And another factor is looking at the age. How long have you been able to manage credit? So your age is very important. If you have just a few months of credit versus having 20, 15, 20 years of it, your score will actually be higher because it shows that you've been able to manage credit for a long period of time without having any lates. That really shows a sign. The third factor is the limits on your account. So if you have tiny little lines like $500 or $1,000 or $800, it shows that you can't manage big amounts of lines. Now, when you have lines on there that ranges 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 70,000, and you're keeping those balances extremely low, it shows to the bank that you can manage large amounts and you're responsible enough to keep those balances low. So it's just a kind of a risk mitigation for them, whether they're going to give you a decent size limit or they're giving you a low interest, and also what terms do they give you. So these all change depending on what they're trying to give you: a car, a house, a credit card. There's different FICO scores that weigh certain things. Like, for example, the FICO score that actually is the auto score. It's the auto FICO score. When you go and apply for a car, they're going to focus on items like, have you ever missed a lot of auto payments? Do you even have a history on even owning a car and paying for a car? What were those limits? Did you ever have a repo on that car? Were you a joint on somebody's card, a car loan? So it's all focused on car related. So it weighs, even though you have an 800 score and you've never owned a car or leased a car, your FICO auto score is actually going to be lower because you've never been able, that's new to you. So what's new to them creates uncertainty. So they're going to weigh that and give you the score based on that uncertainty. They want to feel a sense like, I'm going to get this money back.
Right. They want to feel confidence in the borrower. Yep. So obviously, as you said, payment history is very important, and having consistency in that payment history and making those on time.
Yeah.
Obviously, avoiding the derogatory marks or late payments, very important. The credit age of your overall open accounts, very important. Yeah. What about the credit card usage amounts and overall, is it bad to have more accounts, less accounts? How does that tie into somebody's overall credit score, and what should they be paying attention to with that?
Yeah, so incidentally, it's 21 cards that you should have in your account to have a decent score. Why that many? Is because you accumulate
21 cards?
21 cards, yeah. It's
wow.
Like the magic number. Why? Because they want to make sure that you can manage a lot of cards. And remember, each of those cards, if you keep it under 30%, but ideally, if you keep them under 5% on each card, not the overall limit, but on each card, it shows as if you're not desperate to use it all. And you can manipulate that because if you know what the reporting date is on each card, the reporting date is the date that you can find this on creditkarma.com. It's the date in which that bank or lender reports your balance and your history to the credit bureau. So say today is the 21st, and today is the reporting date of your card. What you want to do is, it's usually due within 7 days of that. If you zero that card down, if you have a $10,000 limit and you zero it down to like pretty nothing, they would have reported today. This is the reporting date. Tomorrow on the 22nd, if you max that card out because you needed supplies to renovate your flip, it still shows as zero. And you can still go and get other lines of credit while you're doing that. So you have to know how to manipulate those reporting dates.
Very important.
Know the rule. It's a game. Boy, that's the best thing, because then now you can change the reporting dates on all the cards so that you can know when to use a card and which is to your advantage. It's a game. Don't put them all due on the same reporting date so that you can circle that debt around, because technically you are maxed out, but what they're seeing is that you're not. Like you're full, but actually it shows like you're hungry. You know what I mean? You're still hungry. So, yeah.
And now a lot of people go, okay, I want to get more credit cards. I only have one. I've been told my whole life that credit is bad, or I should only have 1 or 2 credit cards. You're telling me I should work my way up to 21. What is the timeline for that? How many credit cards can you open up at once? How do you choose which ones are the right credit cards for you, knowing that there is some impacts that it will have if you don't choose it and manage it responsibly.
That's a really good point. So it all happens. What is your end game? What are you trying to do with that money? And then you do it in an order that serves you. So some people can do all 21 cards within a few months. And it's called credit card sequence, meaning they make sure that their credit is right, the score is decent, all the inquiries are right. They have to freeze certain credit bureaus. So it's a whole technique that's involved in it. It's like doing open heart surgery. You got to get all the surgeons in place. You got to put the right anesthesia. You have to have all your tools in place, and you go in there and you get it all done and you sew it up. There are certain people who would want to do certain procedures a little bit and go back and heal and come back and do it again. And so it depends on that person, and we got to assess where their score is. That's why it's important to go through mentorship with us, because one technique may not work for somebody else. If someone has a good basis of credit and their balances are low, then we can have a different process for that. But someone who has a lot of debt, we got to move that debt around. And why is it important to have all these lines is you've been taught that credit is bad, but people don't understand that the debt on credit is bad. Credit itself is powerful.
Right.
That's where you need to know how to manage that particular balance and that particular debt so that it serves you instead of you being, in control by the credit. Okay. And having these different lines is important because, say, for example, on Chase credit card, you get 3 of them on that particular bank. You can now reallocate those limits around so that you look good all the time. So you can play with it. If you have only 1 card, you can't manage that limit. You're stuck with that 1 limit. And what if you're maxed out? Where do you offset that debt? If you have 3, then you can move limits that are available on those 3 and keep them as those limits low because you don't owe anything, and move them over here. So now, instead of being 70% in debt, it goes all the way down to like 20 or 25. Then it opens you up to getting more lines at 0% that you can use for your flip or whatever you need to do. So it's a game. The more in one bank, the better, so that you can utilize that. And multiple banks, because what if one bank doesn't like you and you had all your eggs in that bank and they close your account? Well, guess what? That available limit is no longer there and your score is going to tank. That's why I encourage to have multiple banks for that reason, so that you are your own bank. You're not relying on one bank because they can get silly on you and close those accounts.
Absolutely. Having all your eggs in one basket, at least on this front, you're saying it's better to diversify. And for people that want to understand a little bit more of, okay, this makes sense to me. Where do I find the best credit card options that are out there so that I can explore and determine, 1, whether or not these really meet my criteria and my goals, and 2, what have the best benefits?
Yeah, so you can get on, there's some guides out there. US Credit Card Guide is a very free resource. You can go up there and there's different tabs on there. So if you're into the cashback, or you're into travel, or you're into a certain airline, you can click those down. Or you want to do a balance transfer, you can click 0 interest balance transfer or 12 months balance transfer. So it's like a menu, and it has all these tabs, and it did most of the research for you. So now all you have to do is define what you want. You're in control of your credit. The resources are there. With the way Google is right now, with the way the internet is right now, your phone has all the apps. Everything, there's no reason why you can get access to all this credit and free money to put it in whatever you plan to do. But my suggestion is, if you can't figure it out and it's outside of your comfort zone, definitely reach out to someone like me. If it's not me, someone in the credit space that has credibility, so that they can walk you through it. Because then that way you're saving a lot of time and money, because that's very expensive. If you waste time and you waste money, then you're not going to get there. And it's always good to have someone that's been there. So whoever you choose, and again, I don't try to plug myself or anything, but there's a lot of people out there that is just starting in the game. Just check their resources and find out if their references and to make sure that they're a credible source. But yeah.
So if somebody was to, one of the things that I used to believe before I learned a lot more about credit was, if I open up 2 or 3 credit cards, in a week, there's going to be all these hard inquiries. It's going to hurt my credit score. What if I get denied? What if I can't open up all of these at one time? Is applying for multiple at once really a bad thing? What do you say to that narrative for people that are worried about those things? And how do you maybe get around that or alleviate those concerns?
Well, one good thing is I am the credit ninja. So if there are any inquiries that show up, they'll be gone. So I'm very advanced in what in this process. So I know how to handle after the surgery. I know how to sew it up, and I know how to get rid of that wound. So I'm able to remove most of these inquiries, which give you an opportunity to do second round, third round, fourth round. I mean, how much credit do you want? Just tell me. We'll get you there.
I love that. And for a lot of people, especially, let's say, in the times and circumstances we find ourselves right now, what are the pros and the responsible ways of using credit, and what are some of the negative ways that you see most people, the uninformed, the masses, using credit improperly, and why obviously it's gotten such a bad rap and bad stigma around it? Can you spotlight the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it, so that way people can fully wrap their head around leveraging credit for the right reasons and getting the ROI, getting the leverage they're looking for?
Yeah, so when you are in the process of getting into these credit card sequences, you need to know, what are you going to do with it? Is there something that you want to pursue? Like, you want to get into real estate, make sure that you know what you're doing. What properties you want to get? Did you get the right mentor? Did you get those systems in place? And then you start pulling the trigger, because you need to analyze, what is your ROI, on that. If that investment is bringing you 3, 4, 5%, and that cost of that debt is 1 to 2%, and the timeline, will you get that money back in 6 months? If that is an offer that ends in 12 months, you need to cut that timeline in half. And organizing all these cards on a spreadsheet really is helpful, because you'll list the name of the card, what the limit is, what is the balance on them, when is the offer due, what is the rate on that. You really need to have that down. And I have spreadsheets, so if anyone want to hit me up, I can send you the spreadsheet on it. Once you're organized, then you'll know what to put it in. If you want to do Forex trading, well, you have to analyze, are you competent in Forex trading? Have you been practicing on a test account? What is your return on it? Maybe you want to keep that for stocks are at its low right now. You want to dollar cost average and get stocks as you go. Don't buy it all in one chunk. Maybe you can average it out, and in your mind, I'm going to have this in here for 8 months. This credit offer is going to be good for a year. So I need to decide in 8 months if it pops, and what's my target that it's going to pop. So really need to analyze what you're going to use the fund. Don't execute on it if you don't know what you're going to do with it. And don't buy things that don't serve you. Like, if you're trying to run ads to generate money for your business, that's fine, because that's justified. But don't go buying fancy stuff, cars, like some of these people are doing. They're buying, exotic cars, expensive clothes. None of that stuff is going to generate money. So your first wave of money that comes in should be used to generate more money. Then when you do generate more money, what is your little reward for it? That's fine. Because if you're using only 0.5% of the money that you've achieved to get your reward, maybe a little tiny trip, it's fine to have rewards, but don't have the reward until you actually gain something from it.
Yes, absolutely. You got to use it responsibly. And like you said, right, it should be leveraged in a way that generates more income, more opportunity, not just to buy a material or depreciating asset. Now, you talked on something that I know is going to perk the ears up of a lot of people. You can, quote unquote, invest with your credit. Talk more about how you've seen people creatively use their credit lines to invest in real estate or Forex or stocks or other opportunities.
Right. There are some people who get into the e-commerce space. So it may be creating a store on their own. It may be 5,000, 10,000, where they find products that they see that is selling. Because if you kind of like search through social media on Facebook ad, you'll see certain items that it just spike your interest, because you're thinking, I would buy that product because it has mass appeal. And you can research that and learn about it, and you can find YouTubes for free. Or if you want to invest in courses, that will teach you how to create a skill. All these people who really want to make money, the problem is they don't have a skill. Learn a skill, whatever it may be, whether it's real estate, finding products, selling. If you really don't know how to sell, invest in a course that could teach you how to sell. I mean, Grant Cardone has free YouTubes. Learn stuff for free. If you can't afford it, there's YouTubes out there that for free. There's also Amazon, drop shipping. You can learn all that on YouTube for free. And then once you feel comfortable, you can get a mentor for a small price. And that's an education in yourself. And I believe in using credit for that. But make sure that you look into who your mentor is and use credit for that. Then you can actually 10x that experience. Once you get out and you have a game plan, execute on it. Pull the triggers on it. You need to have the confidence. I don't care like how much knowledge you know or how many notes you have, but if you don't pull the trigger and you don't have the confidence and you are fearful of everything, you don't deserve to win. You got to pull the trigger. So scared money doesn't make money. If you feel comfortable about the deal, go for it. Don't second guess yourself. Now, if you feel like it's not a good deal, don't go for it. Your gut is very important. I learned that over the years.
Tell me more about, what are your overall thoughts on the current market we find ourselves in with all of this uncertainty and where we see the market going? Obviously, there's been a lot of expansion, contraction, even more contraction, some expansion back in a lot of the money markets.
Yeah.
How does that impact what you're doing and what people should be paying attention to as to whether or not they have the availability to get some of the credit, or at least just some maybe new things that people should be paying attention to as this coronavirus impact unfolds?
Right. So because it's uncertainty, there's going to be a lot of changes, but the thing that you're in control is in your environment. So you are in control of your own finances. What is your monthly, budget? What is your monthly expenses? Now, what is your credit like? What is your score? Find out what your score is. From there, take the time now to fix your score. Because once you fix your score, you're prepared. So when we get out of this coronavirus, you're able to refinance your house practically or get new credit cards. So these are the things that you can control. You can only control the things that you know about, the things that you can look up, the things that you can organize. Outside this world, of course, there's going to be things that you can't control, but that's overwhelming. So deal with what you can control. Another thing is with the credit markets, banks are going to get stricter. And as time goes by, as this economy changes, it may be, going in the wrong direction. So banks will make it very difficult for you to get lines of credit and the limits will be lower. And that's where you need to take the opportunity to get your credit right. So that way you can have access to these funds before it gets super strict. And by having these funds available, you can get more for less. Why do I say that? You can get more stocks for a little bit amount of money that you have. This is an opportunity for you to jump in if you've missed a boat in like 5 years ago when it's so hot until now. So it's actually giving back some of those gains so that people who want to get back on that boat definitely jump on, but you got to have your cash right. Same thing with buying a home. People will eventually not make their house payment. Remember, they're delaying it for a few months. That doesn't mean you don't have to pay it. Here's the problem that people don't understand. Even though the banks say you don't have to pay for 3 months, that doesn't mean that they can still report late on there. Come the 4th month when they're going to ask for a payment, they're going to ask for 3 payments in full. They're not going to tack it to the back of the loan. They're going to now say, we gave you time. Did you come up with the 3 payments that you missed? And if you don't, they're going to now move forward with legal proceedings. So this is like no joke. So this is the time that you need to prepare to get your credit right.
I want to take a quick sidebar real fast. Being a real estate investor, that's one thing that I'm studying inside and out right now, and just seeing in general the amount of forbearances jumped, and the fact that right now, at least based on current data from the Mortgage Bankers Association, just talking in real estate for a second, 5% of all mortgages are in forbearance right now, and they're projecting anywhere from half to 2/3 of those potentially being unable, to come up with those 4 payments in a lump sum in 90 days. What kind of opportunity do you see for an investor like myself or other investors that might have an opportunity to help on the debt side of that, or is there a play at all, at least in the credit market as an investor?
Well, there's so many. You can do like personal loans, and then you can get in positions for this. There will be people who are going to be forced to sell their home so that they can consolidate their life. They may get a smaller house, but they're gonna sell on the way down. That means these homes are going to be dropping like crazy. So don't get committed to any houses now until you see where they actually bottom down. They're on their way down right now. I mean, as you can see, oil prices is like at a negative, meaning there's so much supply out there and people are paying for you to take the oil, basically. Well, imagine that's what happened in the housing market in 2008. They walked out of their home. They're not even gonna sell it. They got to a point where I just don't want to deal with it. So that's where we're gonna be looking at in terms of supply. There will be a lot of supplies on homes and cars and so forth. So you just need to be prepared financially to swoop these up.
Talk to me a little.
It's going to be a big sale, a big garage sale.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a real estate investor, I'm hoping it's close to 2008. It could be worse. It could be less. But we do know, obviously, some shifts are happening right now. The impacts of coronavirus. We don't know, obviously, how big they're going to be in various sectors. But we know it's making a shift and it's going to have an impact. And there's going to be opportunity that comes from that, right? And having access to credit, having access to capital, extremely important in times of opportunity. I want to shift real quick before we jump into a little bit of the business side of things, talking about the rewards and the, right? That's the fun and the sexiness of credit. Obviously doing it responsibly in a lot of the ways that we've been talking about and you teach to a lot of your clients and consultants. But in general, what are some of the fun and exciting aspects of credit when it comes to rewards that you do it at the highest level? Many of your students and clients do it at a really high level. What are some of the things that people should be aware of so that way as they get a little bit more in tune and astute with credit principles and practices and how to navigate and quote unquote play the game that they can actually take advantage of and get rewarded for?
Right. So there's so many different credit card companies out there and they're competing to get your business. So in turn, they're going to give you reward points for signing up and hitting the small purchases. So I'm going to give you an example. If you're trying to sign up for a Delta card, for example, they may have like 50,000 point bonus for you to use their card and to spend 3,000 or 2,000. Well, you're going to normally spend that on your other credit cards anyway. So you shift that spend to this card until you hit that limit. Once you hit that limit, you're now being able to get those points. So those points are now used for travel. So instead of paying cash or credit for travel, now you have all this access points that you can use anytime. It's like extra money, extra bank that you've kind of like earned. And there's so many different ways to use it because you can pay your insurance card on it. Just make a list of all the expenses that you have that you can actually put on a credit card. That's all you have to ask. And make that list. And as you go down and get these new credit cards, just concentrate on filling that, that spend up and hitting that. Once you hit it, you can put it away until you're able to use that card for that travel for that airline. Or American Express, they have great points for the gold business card. Let me give you an example. If you have an e-commerce business and you're placing Facebook ads anyway, a lot of these young kids, when they first start, they put everything on a debit card because they don't have credit. Well, I'm able to now help a lot of these young kids get the credit cards, get the Amex cards, and they put all their spends on that card. So instead of like leaving money on the table, they're now being able to get 3 times, 4 times point on ad spend. So if they spend X amount of dollars, it's 4 times. That's pretty big. So they never have to pay for flights again, hotels again, or if, say, for example, if they don't want to spend it on a hotel or a car, there's a way that you can turn that into money. If you open a Schwab Platinum card, that's an Amex, and you have any of your Amex points, you can move those points into Schwab and take that down. I think it's 1.25 ratio that you can take that money down. So there's all this different way to actually extract money from the system instead of if you just use your cash or your other credit cards and you don't know how to manipulate that, you don't get the full benefits of all these points. Last year for my travels and so forth, I think I spent over $100 and something thousand worth of travel for free, because using points, upgrade some points. And remember, the hotels that I'm staying at are not cheap. They're the Ritz-Carlton, which is $400 or $500 a night, more, sometimes $900 a night. The Waldorf Astoria, all my flights on Southwest is free. And that's over, I don't think it was $25,000 worth of flights for free. And I have a companion pass. So anyone that travels with me on Southwest is free. So whatever I spend, it mirrors onto my companion pass for free. There's so many different hacks out there. We also have Marriott passes and Hilton passes that we sell for very inexpensive to all of our mentors. So these passes allow you to stay at any hotel, Hilton or Marriott. So if the rack rate is $400 or $500, it's $59. So that's money that could go back in your business because you didn't have to pay for that convention or that mastermind or that family trip. I mean, the banks are there because they make money off of the merchant. So they're giving you a piece of what they get from the merchant. So why not give it to you in points? And if you can't use the points, you can move that into cash equivalency.
So many cool and exciting ways of leveraging credit. Obviously, again, the disclaimer here is you have to do it responsibly. Having someone like Lyann, or another mentor in your corner is going to be a great way to kind of shorten the learning curve, avoid mistakes, and actually leverage it the way that it should be leveraged. One of the best things that I learned over the last couple years literally was credit. I haven't paid for a flight in a couple years. Most of my hotels are covered. A lot of my even rental cars are covered. There's so many different ways, right? But it definitely is a game, and you have to understand how to play the game at a high level, or the game will play you. And I've seen that happen for a lot of people where they get they get excited about the sexiness of what they're hearing, but they don't actually put in the time to learn it, or they don't have counsel around them to kind of give them the guardrails and the roadmap for doing it properly, and they get themselves in an even deeper hole. So if you're listening to this right now, you guys, be very cautious of what Lyann said, in the sense of there's a lot of people out there that haven't done this. They maybe read about it, but they haven't had real experience or a track record or a resume in it. So be cautious of who you follow, who you consult, who you allow to speak into your world, right? Very, very important, because you want to make sure that you're getting the right results and you're setting yourself up to get 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead, instead of obviously digging yourself into a deeper hole. Now, one of the things that I've been very intrigued by and interested by over the last 3, 4, 5 years in my own real estate businesses has been this idea around getting credit established specifically for your business that's not tied to the individual. Give us an overall umbrella, kind of overview of how is business credit created and used for, let's just say, the small business owner in general.
Yeah, so once we get your personal credit right, you can actually apply for the second part of business, which is business credit based on your personal, because that's where you need the next step up. It's a ladder. This is the next ladder. So if you go to a Bank of America and open a business card with Bank of America, they're going to actually run your personal credit, because that's all you have now, to create a business credit relationship with them. So they're going to run your credit. Say your score is 750. They're going to come back and say, I'm going to give you $25,000 in your business name, but you're going to be personally guaranteed for this, which is fine, because if you're not planning to skip out, that relationship is strong. Now, once that's in place, you can now create corporate credit account, which is the third box of credit, where you can start now getting your PAYDEX score. PAYDEX score is the score that is used for corporations and the reporting of their financials on there. And that can be created. We have a service right now. Those usually run about $5,000 average to do. It's really worth it, because it's a write-off for you, because it is a business expense to create your business entity for the credit side. Once that's in place, you can now build out relationships with reporting agencies that report business corporate credit. And that's something with Experian, TransUnion, they have a different division that handles corporate credit. then you get certain number of credit cards and certain number of vendors in place to show your your credibility and also your creditworthiness in the corporate world. So this is totally different, but over time you can now build these relationships with Ford, all the Ford automotive companies and so forth, and big vendors. Once that's in place, you can ask for bigger lines, and it stacks up over time. And this is not done overnight, but the power of it is that you are not going to be personally guaranteed any of these loans later on, because now they trust you. It's like training wheels. The training wheels is your personal credit. After that, they get kicked off, and then you really bike on your own without these training wheels. And if for some reason that particular corporation gets affected and because of coronavirus and you can't operate anymore, you can dissolve it and they can't personally come after you. And it has to be dissolved properly. So definitely seek an attorney to set it up right. And if necessarily, if that ever happens, you need to, go down correctly too. So it's very powerful. And I want to touch back on the part about having a lot of cards and having responsibility. Remember, not everybody can handle that many cards. So this game is not for everyone, because there are some people I know that has one card and they can barely make payments on that. They keep forgetting. They're not made for it. So keep them at one card, and they need to do automatic payments because they're too busy, or they claim that they're too busy. So definitely set up automatic payment 3 days in advance on all your credit cards and all of your bills. So that way you can't have the excuse that I'm too busy, because you've already set it up. And once you automate your finances, I think you can actually sleep better. So automate everything that you can.
I was going to ask, and just to recap, you guys, I mean, the overall holy grail of where you want to ascend up to and climb that ladder, right, is having non-recourse credit, right? So that way, God forbid, like you said, if something catastrophic happened in your life or in your business, you can dissolve that credit line, that business, and ultimately still protect yourself and your assets in that process. Lyann, overall, talk about just the timeline. So that way, if people are thinking, oh, I'm going to bump my credit score from 580 to 800 and have $1 million line of credit with all my credit cards in the next 6 months, give us a realistic time frame and kind of the process behind this that people should at least be aware of.
Sure. So realistically, depending on what your situation is, if you have a 500 score and you don't have a lot of negative items, you're going to get there faster, because all we have to do is add positive items and create information on your file to prep you up to get there. Now, if you have a 500 score and you have a lot of derogatory bankruptcies, tax liens, I mean, you're a hot mess. It's going to take longer. It may be 8 months to a year, but all you have is time. If you don't start today, a year comes by really quick, and people will have excuses. Well, I should have done it back then. Well, at the same time, you have to know whether it's valuable to you. And if it's valuable to you and you want to invest in it, and it's not a cheap process, because it's very labor intensive to get that going, then you should invest in yourself if you're taking it serious. And we only deal with people who are serious about getting that done. And it could range anywhere from average $2,500 to $5,000. But I think your credit deserves it, because that's your gateway to getting access to funds, to actually opening business, to resolve problems in your life. You need to really take a risk on yourself.
I love that. I love it. So as we kind of come to the tail end of this, first and foremost, guys, all the links, all the information, any of the websites or resources that Lyann has mentioned in the show, those will all be in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, first, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. But two, know that you can find all the resources in the show description or at millionairemindcast.com, and ways that you can connect with Lyann. Lyann, you put out a lot of great resources and content and info and a lot of freebies for a lot of people outside of the paid consultant clients and coaching clients that you guys work with. Where is the best place for them to find more information from you and all the stuff that you're putting out?
Yeah, so if you search me Credit Ninja and then put YouTube, you'll find some YouTube interviews with other influencers. I don't have my own channel because I'm busy trying to run my company here, but I am invited onto a lot of podcasts and YouTube. And the best thing is follow me on Instagram. I have a close friend group, and it's an inexpensive way to get in touch with all the travel hacks and so forth that we normally charge like $2,500 to do. It's $500. So all you do is do a DM to Credit Ninja VIP, and one of my assistants can get a hold of you. And all you do is send Venmo in for $500. But you'll have access to all the updates on credit. It's very valuable information, and it's very affordable. So that's the best way for you to get a hold of me. And also all my stories and posts and all the tips, you can learn there for free. You don't have to pay. I mean, I'm not there to pitch anything. I just want you guys to be more aware and more, serious about your credit. Because if you don't care about your credit, then nobody cares. And the fact that I care more about your credit than you care about your credit, that needs to be more weight towards you. I want to give some quick tips about
Please.
coronavirus, because I want them to make money. Call your credit card companies. Make a list of all of them. Put their phone numbers. Call them and ask them if they can waive any type of annual fees, because you're not being able to travel. You're not being able to fly or stay at their hotels, and tell them that if they can waive these fees or give you some credit back, that's money that can go back in your pocket. And let them know, I'm thinking about canceling this or going to a competitor, and name that competitor. If you're calling Chase, mention Amex. If you're calling Amex, mention Chase. They don't want to lose you during this time, because the cost of acquisition for a client is so high. So for you to call them and say, will you work with me? Because I'm a loyal customer for this long. They're going to put credits back on there. Okay. If you have Uber credits on Amex that you can't use because no one's driving on Uber, go and book a flight, book a trip for, like, if it's $15 credit, book it for 14 something and cancel it within 30 seconds. That money is going to stay in your account instead of being gone forever. Call and make a list of all your expenses that are on auto pay with credit card. Find out what you don't need and call and cancel those things. That's more money. It's all, the name of the game now is preservation of capital. You need to survive this. We thought this was going to only be 2 weeks. Now it's into, what is it? Almost 2 months now, right? We don't know if it's going to end 3 months, 6 months, or a year. Your resources is what's going to save you at this time. So definitely make that list. That list is going to save you through this, okay? And cut down expenses however you can, because that you need to do that. So annual fees. And then when you do call these banks, tell them that you are affected by the coronavirus. They will stop the interest charges. Interest charges running every month could actually add up. So if you can save $200, $400 a month in interest charges on each of these credit cards, you're using this time as an excuse. I don't care if you're affected. Call them. They're ready to put that in their notes, okay? But make sure you make the minimum payment every month. So you'll save on the interest, but make the minimum. You're gonna go get ahead with this. I think I saved over $3,000 or $4,000 on all the annual fees, interest charges, and everything. Okay.
I love it. You guys take advantage of that right now. Those are some amazing Corona credit tips for you to finalize our interview today with Lyann. And Lyann, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you, brainstorming how to leverage such a powerful tool and platform that for so many people is scary. And it really just comes back to being undereducated and how to connect the dots on this. And I know you do such an amazing job with your community, with your clients, those you consult, and just also the free content that you put out. So guys, be sure to check out Lyann Nguyen at Credit Ninja on Instagram. And I'm excited to stay in touch and see how you continue to evolve, knowing that you're always on the front lines. I don't need to be the fastest, smartest, or strongest. I just need to be connected to the people who are and are kind of cutting through the jungle and creating the path for me to follow. And that's one thing that I know you do so well for everybody in your stewardship. So thank you so much for tuning in and joining today, guys. Be sure to check out all the links, future episodes, subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.